An optical disk drive operates on a strict mechanical contract. The laser must read the data, but the internal hardware must never actually touch the spinning polycarbonate surface. But in 2005, the Xbox 360 broke that contract. The result was thousands of lawsuits and a trip to the Supreme Court, all over something that could have been fixed by a small engineering tweak, costing mere cents. There's a misconception that because LPs work through physical contact, then CDs do as well, but they never have and they don't need to. The disc spins at high speed inside the tight mechanical enclosure, and the only thing that keeps it from contacting the surrounding hardware is the precision of the drive's design and the trust that the disc stays seated and centered throughout. So, what happens when it fails? When the system doesn't work? A scratch, a physical mark on the underside of your disc. It shows in a specific pattern too. A circular gouge concentric with the disk's center, produced by contact between the spinning disk and the internal drive components. It's different from what a scratch caused by the user's mishandling would look like. This one is a perfect ring, unmistakably mechanical in origin. And the thing with the Xbox 360 is that it was designed and marketed to sit in two orientations: horizontal like a traditional console on a shelf, or vertical standing upright. Microsoft even sold stands for vertical placement, and the console had rubber feet positioned for both configurations. Promotional images showed both, and it was meant to be a novel and cool feature. Position your console whichever way you want, whatever fits best for your needs. When complaints started appearing about discs getting scratched, many logically pointed to this feature. Perhaps users had not dropped consoles or obviously mishandled them. Maybe it was simply this design, which meant that ordinary movements, small tilts, and vibrations that would happen in a living room could be enough to cause a disc to shift inside the drive while spinning. The legal term used in court filings was that the disc became unchucked. It lost its seated position, shifted laterally, and contacted the optical pickup unit or other internal surfaces while still spinning, and the contact produced the gouge. Microsoft's position at the time was that it had not received widespread reports of Xbox 360's scratching discs, and that the console carried a warning sticker on the disc tray advising users not to move the console while a disc was spinning. That sticker was even printed in 3 languages, so the company argued that the damage to discs was the result of consumer misuse, not a product defect. Microsoft later said that only 0.4% of Xbox 360 owners had reported scratching issues. But the complaints continued to accumulate in forums and consumer media.
Here's my brand new EA Sports NHL 08 disc for the Xbox 360. I just bought it 2 days ago. It's been in the Xbox 360 for a total of about an hour with the machine turned on. And it's already got these enormous scratches in it. Big circular scratches that go all the way around the disc. I should say that I never, under any circumstances, moved the box in any way at all, ever. So that's not the problem. And I've decided I'm going to phone Microsoft finally about this and see what they have to say.
And in early 2007, they became something more public. The Dutch consumer affairs television program Casa investigated the issue and reported findings that focused on specific drive variants. The show's claims included that certain drives installed in the Xbox 360 were missing a rubber damping component that standard DVD players included, and that it was this absence that allowed the disc to make contact with hard internal surfaces. In testing, Casa reported that 1 in 9 consoles spontaneously scratched a disc after roughly 5 hours of stationary play. So it wasn't the shifting of positions that was generating the issue. Microsoft reported that it had not participated in the test, could not evaluate the methodology in detail, and had no indication that from its own data that the problem was widespread. The company simply encouraged affected users to contact customer support. No matter how much they denied the issue, though, the physical proof couldn't be hidden. A scratched disk is visible evidence of something. But what exactly happened inside the drive? Under what conditions? Because of what design choice or user action is not readable from the scratch itself? Shortly after the CASA coverage, EU Consumer Affairs Commissioner Meglena Kuneva asked Microsoft to explain how it handled disk scratching complaints in the Netherlands and what its understanding of the issue was across other European markets. Reports at the time noted roughly 1,000 Dutch complaints had been documented, so clearly it wasn't a minuscule problem the way Microsoft claimed it was. In July 2007, Jorge Brouwer of Broward County, Florida, filed a federal class action lawsuit against Microsoft in the Southern District of Florida. The suit claimed the Xbox 360 was negligently designed and manufactured. Broward said his copies of the games Gears of War and Madden NFL 07 had been destroyed by the console he purchased in November 2006, each bought for $50, and that customer support had told him just to buy replacement discs without acknowledging that the hardware might be the cause. The lawsuit sought more than $5 million in damages. Microsoft's representatives at the time kept claiming that out of millions of consoles in use, it had not received any widespread reports of disk scratching. A separate class action case filed in Washington state and later known as Microsoft v. Baker would become the lawsuit that ran all the way to the Supreme Court. The timing of the Florida filing was still notable. It landed less than a week after Microsoft announced it would take charge of more than $1 billion to extend the Xbox 360 warranty to 3 years, covering what the company described as an unacceptable number of repairs for general hardware failures. That was something else, something that became known as the red ring of death problem, a systematic hardware failure caused by thermal stress on the GPU solder connections that left consoles displaying 3 red lights and refusing to start. The disk scratching suits were legally and mechanically separate from the red ring issue, but they conveniently arrived inside the same reliability conversation, and by mid-2007, the Xbox 360 was a machine whose hardware integrity was already under public and financial scrutiny. In December 2008, reports appeared covering unsealed documents from ongoing litigation. The documents were reported to include a declaration from a Microsoft program manager on the optical disk drive team. The quoted language was direct. The program manager was reported to have stated, "This is the information that we as a team optical disk drive team knew about. When we got a first report of disk movement, we knew that this is what was causing the problem." If true, that placed awareness of the potential disk movement issue in September or October 2005, roughly 6 weeks before the November 2005 launch. The same documents were reported to describe design fixes considered before launch, and which were ultimately not implemented. 3 fixes apparently existed: stronger disk clamping, slower rotation speed, and internal bumpers. Court filings allege the bumper solution was rejected partly because it would have approximately added 50 cents to the per-unit manufacturing cost. Microsoft disputed the broader defect framing throughout the litigation and maintained that the scratch issue was a matter of user misuse rather than design failure. By 2008, litigation filings claim Microsoft had received 55,000 disk scratching complaints, but that was never confirmed as an engineering finding. Microsoft's stated figure remained 0.4% of the installed base. The Baker case dragged on. A federal judge in Seattle dismissed the class action in 2012, ruling that individual plaintiffs would each need to prove the cause of their scratched disks separately, which made case-wide treatment impractical. This case then reached the U.S. Supreme Court as Microsoft Corp v. Baker. In June 2017, the court ruled 8-0 in Microsoft's favor, but not on the engineering question. The ruling was procedural, and the plaintiffs had voluntarily dismissed their case in order to trigger an appeal of the class certification denial. The court held that a voluntary dismissal is not a final judgment and therefore cannot be used to force appellate review. The scratching question was never decided on its technical merits at that level, so the class action path ended through a procedural mechanism, not through actually finding out what the drive did or did not do. What makes the disk scratching story worth examining beyond consumer protection is what it reveals about the trust structure when it comes to big companies such as Microsoft. When you buy a product that is meant to read disks, the bare minimum you assume is that it's going to do so correctly and not damage the disk. It's not even a thought, it's just fundamental. And when that very low bar is not met, then everything starts falling apart. The Xbox 360 controversy broke that assumption in a specific and visible way. Plus, a scratch disk is evidence in a form that does not require technical background to understand. Anyone can hold a DVD under a light and see a ring of damage. The problem is that the actual widespread cause of that ring, the exact chain from disk movement to disk contact to physical gouge, is harder to establish without documentation, testing, and access to drive internals. And that's exactly the murky place where legal cases can get stuck for years and years. When you buy a gaming console, all you're thinking about is enjoying the game. Anything else is invisible and should remain that way for a good user experience, especially when it's designed to be handled by everyone, including first-time users, including children. And even more so if you're promising it can be placed in more than one position. You're assuming the device itself will not be the one to blame for something going wrong. And finding out that the company knew this would be an issue and did nothing about it, despite there being solutions, well, trust gets eroded even more. 50 cents per unit adds up to a lot when there's thousands upon thousands of consoles, but it also could have saved both the company and users from so much trouble. Maybe there's a lesson to be learned here.